Hi everyone and welcome to Moonstone Makes. My name is Tommy. Thank you for being here today. Today is a bright and sunny and cold Monday in January here on the Northern California coast where I'm coming to you from. If you're interested in anything I talk about today, I always put links to everything I mentioned down in the description box below. That's also where you'll find my links to everywhere I exist on the internet, including Ravelry and Instagram and Patreon and Ko-Fi and Goodreads. Today's video is a knitting video, so I'm going to show you everything that I've been working on lately and a couple of upcoming plans and fantasy projects. I have one interesting kind of fix-it project to share with you that I have done, and also one sad story about a previous well-loved FO. So what I'm wearing today is my Even Flow cardigan by Joji Locatelli. And this is my favorite cardigan. If you've been around for a while, I talk about it a lot. I wear it a lot. I love this thing. I knit this using Blue Moon Fiber Arts Socks That Rock medium weight, which is a sport weight wool. And I've always loved this so much, but I've always been kind of disappointed with the color of it. Every time I wash this cardigan, which I always hand wash it, color continues to bleed out of it. And I knit this thing, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and it still bleeds. Also, I used different dye lots when making it, so the color has been pretty choppy, especially as it has bled over time and the color has faded. It's become more pronounced. And over the years, whenever I've mentioned that aspect of this sweater, I've had a lot of suggestions to just over dye it and make the color a little deeper, or to reset the color with citric acid or vinegar. And I've been wanting to do that for so long. For years I've wanted to take that suggestion. I just never did it because I never did it. But I finally did it. I did it, I think last week or maybe 2 weeks ago. I just brought this sweater out to my dye studio in the garage where I dye my Moonstone Dyeworks yarn. I got my biggest pot, which isn't very big. Typically I dye 2 skeins of yarn in this pot, but I don't have anything bigger. And I just stuffed this in there, which, let me tell you, this pot was too small for this project. That is a fact. But I did it because that's what I had. And I was hoping to stick with the original color of this, which was bittersweet, only making it a little deeper and darker and kind of refreshing that color. So I chose 2 dyes just from my dye studio dyes, and I chose a deep maroon, which I think is called deep maroon, and then a dark brown. And I just kind of scooped them in willy-nilly, mixed them really good, and then just immersion dyed my sweater. Now, like I said, the pot was too small. So the dye was a little bit uneven as it took to the sweater, even though I spent a lot of time swishing it around and really mixing it in and trying to like squeeze it and trying to get the dye to access all the little crevices of the sweater. And I think for the most part, it came out really, really great, and I'm so happy I did it. It definitely has little spots where it's like splotchy or darker than other spots. But I kind of knew going into it that I was going to be okay with that. I knew I had the wrong size pot. I knew I was just kind of doing it on a whim and a little willy-nilly, but I did it. After all these years of complaining about the color of the sweater, I finally did it. I set the dye with citric acid, which is my typical acid to set my dyes. And so I haven't tried washing it yet after that my re-dye job. So I don't know if the old color is going to bleed still or if it got set by my setting process. So we'll see. But I'm very happy with how it came out. I love the color so much more than I did before. It just reminds me of what the color looked like when I first knit this sweater. It's a deep maroonish, brownish, it's just like a warm kind of cinnamon color. I really like it. I'm so happy I did it. And this is kind of what the sweater looks like in case you don't remember or you haven't been around for a while. So this is the Even Flow cardigan. It's an open fronted kind of rolled collar sweater, and it's got set-in sleeves, and it has a patterning on the back that looks like this. It's kind of like a single one-stitch cable kind of pattern, and it's long. It has pockets, which I don't ever use because the pocket placement isn't great. But it's a cardigan that I really love to wear, and I found myself not wearing it the past few months because I think I was annoyed by how faded it was. So I'm so happy I finally took the time to over dye it, and it worked out so well. I'm so happy with it. So for those of you who are interested in over dyeing your knitwear, I'll kind of give you a brief explanation of my process. Like I said before, I have a dye studio in my garage because I dye yarn as my small business, Moonstone Dyeworks, which is linked below if you're interested. And so I have all of the equipment already, but it could really easily be done at home without a studio, without too much special equipment. So if you want to do something like this, what you'll need is your knitwear, some dye, and depending on the material your knitwear is made out of will determine what kind of dye you need. I'm just going to stick to wool because that's all I ever dye, but if you have a wool garment that you want to over dye, you'll need acid dyes. I'll link below to the ones that I use for my business. They sell them in little tiny tubs by the color, and they're only like, I think typically $4 to $5 per little tub, and you only need a tiny amount. So if it's something you only want to do once or for a few different things and you only want 1 or 2 colors, it's not that much of an investment. To set the dye, you'll need an acid. I use citric acid, which is a food grade powder, and I get it on Amazon, but you can also just use distilled white vinegar. You'll need a pot that you do not dye anything else in. If you don't have a pot to sacrifice, if a couple trips to the thrift store will probably land you one. Try to get one big enough for whatever you're dyeing to swim around freely in it a little bit. And then you just need a stove and like a stirring utensil, which you're not going to use for food anymore. Before I had a dye studio in my garage, I did all my yarn dyeing in my kitchen on my stove, so it's totally fine to do that. You just have to like clean up really well and be safe. And speaking of safety, it is a really good idea, and I always recommend, and it's what I do, wearing like gloves, like nitrile or latex gloves, just like medical grade gloves. And you'll also need a mask because you don't want to be breathing in the powder dyes. So what you'll want to do is fill your pot up with water, put some of your acid in. I would say like a big, like for something casual like this, just do like a big glug of white vinegar, like maybe a tablespoon or 2. Put your knitwear in it just as if you're soaking it to block it, and then heat it up slowly, like medium heat. Keep it on low, don't let it come to a full boil, just get it really hot almost to the simmering point, and then take your knitwear out, set it aside in a bowl or something like that. Mix your dyes. This is like personal preference. You could just like dump a little like teaspoonful right in the pot, stir it around really, really, really good, maybe even with a whisk to break up any clumps. Or you could stir it around in a little dish separately and then pour that liquid in. It's just like that. I can't really tell you how to do. It's just going to be like, you do what you do. You might want to test it on some other fabric or some smaller piece of knitwear that you don't care about as much to see what the actual color is going to look like, because it doesn't always look the same in the little container as it does when you put it on your knitwear. But anyway, like with this, I just kind of guessworked and I'm really happy with it. So once you get your dyes mixed into the pot and you've stirred it around really well to break up any clumps, to really disperse the color in the water, dunk your knitwear back in it and be really gentle with it. Stir it around a little bit, be super gentle, and let it sit like that for a while. Don't let it come to a boil, just keep it really low and steamy. And once all of the liquid has absorbed into your knitwear and the water is clear, you're good to go. Turn off the heat, put a lid on it if you have one, and let it sit until it cools. Then wring the water out, wash it, and I don't know. That's, I guess, just how you do it. I didn't intend to do like a little tutorial thing, but there you go. It's just such a simple process, and it's fun to do. It's fun to change up your knitwear in terms of color. And even, I mean, if you're interested in like dyeing a couple skeins of yarn, you can get bare yarn really easily from Knit Picks or something like that. I don't know, try it, it's fun. Okay, on to what I've been knitting. I've been working on a pair of socks for a pretty long time. I think it's probably been like 6 months since I've started working on these socks, and I've finally finished them. These are my shorty socks. They're my Piranesi socks. So this is Moonstone Dyeworks yarn, which is my yarn company, and this is the Piranesi colorway. And it's just a cute little casual pair of shorty socks. This is in my merino sock base, which is a fingering weight base with merino and nylon. And I love them. I did them top down. I used a German twisted cast on for the cuff and a 1x1 ribbing. And I just went straight into the heel flap and gusset when I was done with the cuff. And there's my heel flap, there's my gusset. I do a slip stitch heel flap. And yeah, there she is. The toe is a wedge toe. And I Kitchenered when I was done, and that is it. I used a size US 1 needle for these, and I believe I cast on 64 stitches for the cuff, but I could be wrong. I feel like I just make up that number every time I tell it to you because I don't remember exactly what I did. But it was either 60 or 64, one of the two. And here is what they look like on my feet. Okay, my next project that I've been working on is my scarf that I talked about in my last work in progress video. And this is a scarf that I'm not using a pattern for. I'm just kind of making it up as I go, and it's just one single pattern over and over again. So I made it up once, and now it's what I'm doing. And it is a brioche scarf, and I love it. And the yarn that I'm using for this brioche scarf is Elsa Wool in their Woolen Spun Sport Weight. This is 100%, is it Cormo? I'm the worst. Is it Cormo? I'm pretty sure it's Cormo. Elsa Wool's Cormo, right? I don't have the tag. Anyway, it's beautiful. And it's buttery soft and it's squishy and I'm enjoying it so much. Now I have 2 skeins of this color, 1 skein of a lighter color and 1 skein of a darker color, and they're all like tones of gray. They're all undyed. And so far I have only worked the first skein, so I have this much left, which will probably get me another, I don't know, 6 inches or so. And what I did, I believe I cast on 46 stitches. That is what my current count tells me, but that could be wrong because casting on in brioche, is that like different than what your final stitch count is? I don't know. But anyway, I just cast on a certain number of stitches on a US size 5 needle. These are my Licca interchangeables, which I love. And I just started in with brioche. It's just single color brioche, so it's super, super easy. It's the brioche knit stitch and then slip with yarn in front. Over and over and over and over again, back and forth. Every row's the same. It's delightful. I'm enjoying it so much. My goal is to make it really long. I just want a straight up long, thin, squishy scarf that I can wear. Hopefully I finish it before the end of winter. That was kind of the idea, was that I would wear it this winter. So I have quite a ways to go because I want it to be like a bona fide super long scarf. I have got this cool kitty cat moon stitch marker on here. Now, the edges of this thing have been a little bit of a progression in my figuring out what needs to be done. So let me show you. So I started out just not doing anything. I would just knit the first stitch and on every row, and that's how the edge was turning out. I decided I wanted to try slipping a stitch so that I would get not like that garter edge, but like more of a knit stitch edge, you know what I mean? And so I started slipping the first stitch of every row, I think with the yarn in back, and then I would move it forward to start my brioche knit slip or whatever, I don't know, something like that. And it definitely changed it from being a really dense garter like that to a less dense garter edge like that. And I couldn't figure out why it wasn't turning into the edge that I wanted. Finally, I decided to try, instead of slipping the first stitch, I slipped the last stitch. And I don't think it necessarily matters if it's the first one or the last one. You just have to do it right with like the yarn in the right spot. And I just couldn't figure out how to do it right with the first stitch. So I tried the last stitch and it worked out beautifully. So I started just knitting the first stitch and then slipping the last stitch with my yarn in front. And now my edge looks like this, which is exactly what I wanted. And so I'm definitely not going to go back and reknit it to fix the edge that I had before. I'm just going to have a different edge on one end of the scarf than the whole rest of the scarf, and that's okay. This isn't like anything special. It's just a scarf. I'm totally fine with that. But I'm really excited that I finally figured out what I wanted to do and made it work. So this project has been really fun to work on. I love brioche. It's so much fun to do, and to be able to just do endless brioche without any variation, without any increases or decreases, no shaping, nothing to worry about, not even like the 2-color brioche with the brioche pearls and stuff like that, nothing. It's just the same thing over and over and over again, and I crave that. I love that in knitting, and it's just fun for it to not just be knitting, for it to be brioche. I love it. So this project is wonderful. I'm so into it. I definitely recommend trying it if you're interested in having a scarf, because it's fun. And that's living in my gas please bag with my little unicorn guy. Okay, my next project is a hat that I'm knitting for myself, and I broke into some hand spun that is so pretty. I spun it, I don't know, last year, maybe the year before, and it's just such pretty hand spun, and I'm really happy to actually be using it. So this is what it looks like. It's Polworth and silk. It's a 2-ply fingering weight. I didn't write down the yardage that I got, but it's definitely a fingering weight. It's probably about 500 yards, and I think it's about 4 ounces. I didn't weigh it. But it is from, dang it, I don't know who it's from. I've talked about this fiber on my channel before, so I'm sure I could find it. But it's, the colorway is Spice Cake. It's 75% organic Polworth and 25% silk. And it was the December 2014 Fiber Club of whoever I was a Fiber Club member of in 2014. And the dyer's name is Natalie. I know that because she wrote me a little note. Oh man, this was like the Christmas one, I remember. What? Is it Cloud Lover? I think it's Cloud Lover. I'm pretty sure this is Cloud Lover. That's who I was a member of in 2014 because I remember that kind of stuff. I don't know. But I'm pretty sure it's Cloud Lover, who I don't think does fiber anymore. I don't think you can like buy her stuff anymore unless it's a D-stash or something. But this fiber is so good and I love it, and it's knitting up beautifully. And I am knitting a Musselburgh hat by Isolde Teague. I am finally making one. I've wanted to make one of these hats for so long, and I'm really excited about it. So this is what it looks like. It is top down. Well, so the Musselburgh hat, which I'm sure you've heard about it, is a top to top hat. You knit starting at the crown, and then you increase and then knit a tube, and then you decrease as if you were knitting a bottom up hat. And so you end up having a tube with 2 tops, and you put it inside out, and then that's your hat. It's a double layered hat. And it's been so much fun to work on because, again, it's just straight up knitting in the round for almost ever, and that's what I love. So I'm knitting this on a US size 4 needle for my fingering weight hand spun. The nice thing about the pattern is that you can use the pattern for any gauge. So she has like a chart. You start knitting, then you measure your gauge after you start knitting, and you match your gauge to the chart, figure out what numbers you need to get the size you want. So you kind of have to know your yarn or your gauge, or guess at your needle size for what gauge you want to get at the beginning. And so I initially cast this on with a US size 5 needle, just, I don't know, thinking that my yarn was a little more sport weightish than I think it is. And it ended up being a little too loose, the gauge, for what I wanted. So I ripped it out and then recast on with a 4, and now it's perfect. And I decided to try to go for the adult medium size, and I think that was a mistake. I have tried this on a bigger needle, and it has like no negative ease. It has a little bit of positive ease, and that's just not what I want in a hat. Like, I think I was going for like not as much negative ease in a hat as maybe I once would have, and I think I just overshot it a little bit, and now there's like some positive ease, and so I think it's just gonna like kind of droop on my head, and I don't know. I think I need to rip back to the last point of increases and then reknit for the next size down, for the like adult small or whatever. So this is what the increases look like. It's like a 4-point increase, and this is what the hand spun looks like in its color gradation. It's so great. Gosh, I love it so much. I love hand spun. This is the best. Hand spun is just the best. And then, yeah, I've gotten this far on it, knitting after my increases, so I'm going to be ripping back a lot, which is sad. But that's okay. It's a joy to knit. That's the point, right? So, yeah, I am loving it, but I am going to have to rip back a little bit, redo the size. And that's that for that. The nice thing about this pattern too is that if you run out of yarn, which I don't expect I will, I think I'm gonna have enough for the whole hat, but if you run out of yarn, you can finish with a different yarn. And since you're putting one half of the hat inside the other half, you can wear it either way. And so your like color block can be on the inside where no one will see it, or it can be on the outside and you have a color block hat. It's super cool. Or you can like have your hat lined with a different fiber or color than the outside. Yeah, I'm really excited about this pattern, and it's been totally fun in it. Okay. This one is in my knitting library bag that a viewer sent me as a gift so long ago, and I still love it. I also have a couple other skeins of yarn in here that my daughter Lucy picked out for me to knit for her, which actually kind of segues into my tragic story. So I also talked about this in my last whip video, but she had a hat that I knit her. It was the Purl Soho classic cuffed beanie, maybe? I knit that for her a long time ago. She's worn it to death, and it's been a great hat, but she's grown out of it, and now it fits River, who's my 1.5-year-old. So he's been wearing it, and now I need to knit her a new hat. And her current favorite color is blue. So we went to my stash, and she picked this Quince & Co. Chickadee, which is a sport weight in the peacock colorway, for a new hat for her. So I'm trying to find something that's reminiscent of the classic cuffed beanie for this yarn, because that pattern calls for worsted weight yarn, and this is a sport weight. So pretty much what I want is just a beanie that has a ribbed cuff and then is stockinette and a pom-pom, if I can manage a pom-pom with 50 grams. So I don't know, I've looked on Ravelry. I'm probably just gonna have to like mash up a couple free patterns to get what I want. But let me know if you have any suggestions for sport weight yarn for a kid's hat. I'm probably gonna make an adult size. She's 4, but like adult hats like fit her head, you know what I mean? So I'm probably gonna make like an adult size, so it doesn't have to be a specifically kid's hat. But so this is coming up. I also was originally thinking I would knit her a new hat in this yarn, but since she's so into blue right now, she said she didn't want this yarn, she wanted this yarn, but that she didn't want a stuffy in this yarn. So this one is worsted, and I don't really know what to do. Like, I think it could be cute because it's like all different colors. And so it's going to be kind of like busy and wacky, like a little too much so, a little too wacky and busy for like a petite stuffy. So I think I need like a big stuffy with a lot of negative space. I don't know, with a lot of just stockinette, you know what I mean? This yarn is Warner Mountain Weavers, and this is Rambouillet. Deep Creek Yarns is what it's called. So that's coming up. That's just living in the same bag as my other hat, so I thought I'd show you. But the reason why that brings me on to my tragic story is because this is, you might not be able to tell. Can you tell? Do you know what's tragic about this story? This is the hat that I was talking about. This is the Purl Soho hat that River had been wearing. And I don't know how it happened, but it ended up in the laundry. And I didn't notice, and it ended up going into the washing machine. And then I still didn't notice, and it ended up going into the dryer, because when I pulled the clothes out of the dryer and I went to fold my laundry that day, which was last week, I found this completely felted, tiny beanie. And it's like still cute, like it could still look, the pom-pom even felted. You ever wonder what a felted pom-pom looks like? That's what it looks like. So like it still could fit like a baby, like it's just felted, so like sure it's super warm, but it's too small for either of my kids now. So yeah, I felted, I washed and I dried and I felted our favorite beanie. So now I have to knit River a new beanie too, because now he doesn't have a hat and it's really cold right now. So that's going to be coming up. Maybe I'll do this for him. Now, I already told Lucy I would make her a stuffy in it. So I don't know. I'll go out, hopefully find some worsted weight yarn and make him a new hat too. It's going to be hat crazy around here. There's going to be lots of hat knitting happening around here, but I can't believe I did that. I've never done that before. That was a first for me. That was a first. It must have just been bunched up in like some of his clothes. You know, I don't know. I don't know. Also, it could very well be that he put it in his hamper and like smushed it in his clothes, because he'll do that. He'll put random things in his hamper. So the last thing I want to talk about is the next sweater that I want to knit. And I found this by chance after having searched for something like this really in depth a couple of months ago. I really wanted this exact sweater and I couldn't find it even though I searched for it. And then I just stumbled upon this pattern on Ravelry like a few days ago and I couldn't believe it and I want to make it so bad. It's the sweater number 1 by My Favorite Things. And it's this like perfect ideal sweater that I've wanted so bad that I finally kind of found. There's like things about it. But what I wanted back when I was searching for it was a drop-shouldered, oversized crew neck pullover that had an open mesh pattern. And I found a lot of things kind of like it and that fit some of my slots, but not all of them. Like I wanted an open eyelet mesh, but I really, really, really wanted it to be drop-shouldered and oversized. I want it to be baggy, I wanted it to be a crew neck, and I want it to be long. Like I want it to come down right past my butt. And that I can alter easily with any pattern because most patterns aren't written for that. But I finally found it. So this is exactly that. It's crew neck, it's drop shoulder, it's got an open mesh pattern. And the only thing I don't like about it is that the gauge it's written for, it calls for a bulky weight held together with a lace weight, which is just too much for me. I don't want it to be that bulky. I was ideally wanting a worsted or maybe even an Aran weight kind of gauge. So I'm not sure yet if I'm going to still go for that yarn and then just try to make it work with this pattern, or if I'm gonna do a bulky weight, which would just make it a little easier to work for this pattern. The thing is that I have bulky weight yarn in my undyed yarn stash for Moonstone Dyeworks. So if I go bulky, I have it already and I would just need to dye it and I could make it any color I wanted. If I went worsted, I would either have to make it scrappy, which that's kind of always my fallback. I'm a little sick of scrappy sweaters. I kind of just want like a cohesive one color sweater. And so if I went worsted, I would have to buy yarn, which I just don't want to do, but we'll see. But I'm really excited about having found this pattern. It just fits everything I want. I found a picture online like a few months ago from a clothing company called Cider, I think. They're like one of these companies that like has ads on Instagram, you know, they like make these like really retro looking overalls. And I found this sweater by them one day, which I don't think they sell anymore, but I wanted it so bad and I just love the way it was styled. I love the way it looked. And I didn't want to buy it because I was like, I could make that, but I couldn't really find a pattern with what I wanted. And I thought about drafting one myself, but that's not really my forte. I also thought about just like finding a plain drop shoulder pattern and like adding an eyelet lace, but also that's a lot of work that I don't want to do. So I'm very excited I found this pattern. And now I still need to alter it a little bit, but that's okay. I can handle it. Now I just need to figure out what I'm going to do about yarn. I wish I just had a worsted weight sweater quantity in my stash, but I don't. I'm not a good stasher. My stash is like, I'm not a proficient stasher. Okay, that's everything for today. Thank you for being here and hanging out with me while I show you all of my knitting. What have you been working on? I'd love to hear about it. Is it winter where you are, or is it summer, and are you knitting according to your weather? Or are you going rogue and knitting tank tops in the winter and Gansey sweaters in the summer? Let me know. Have you ever done this? I feel like this is a rite of passage. Have you ever felted one of your favorite things by throwing it in the washing machine? Let me know. I would really love to feel not so alone in that regard. So thank you for being here today. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it so much. As always, this video and all of my videos are heavily brought to you by my friends over on Patreon. If you're interested in checking out my Patreon, you can follow the link in the description box below. It helps me and my business and my family so much. And there are some cool perks. You can get yarn in some tiers mailed to your house every month. You can get digital downloads. I create phone backgrounds and calendars every month for most of the tiers on my Patreon. In fact, I have finished recently the one for February, so that's going up on Patreon on February 1st, and I already use it on my phone. Whenever I finish creating a phone background image for Patreon, I start using it right away to like test it. So I always use it for like a couple weeks before it goes live. So if you want a little sneak preview of what February's thing is going to be, it's circles. I thought about doing something Valentine's Day, but then I was like, nah, F that. I want to do these cool retro circles. So that's what it is. And then there's going to be a calendar to match, which I'm actually pretty proud of. I like it a lot. So if you're interested, check it out. There's lots of fun stuff going on over there, including a Discord chat where we talk about yarn and books and stuff. But enough of that. If you are a patron, thank you so much. If you liked this video, please do hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to my channel for future videos about knitting and books and vlogs about daily life and stuff. And check me out on Instagram if you want to over there too. I post some things sometimes on Instagram. All right, I hope you're having a lovely day. And I hope your week is filled with lots of good beverages and lots of good crafting and maybe lots of good reading if you're into that kind of thing. Maybe lots of good roller skating if you're into that kind of thing. All right. I love you. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.